Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this quick hit installment of Locked On Texans. As you know, we are your hosts, Cody M. Davis and Johnson Sports Guy Hickman. And the reason why I say quick hit installment is because today's episode of Locked On Texans is actually the crossover show that we did with our guy, our brother, Mr. Tony Wiggs, the host of Locked On Jaguars, as we talked about the season opener that's going to take place Sunday inside of NRG Stadium against the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. But we got to do this quick hit installment because the Texans made a trade on yesterday that took everybody by surprise by sending Bradley Roby to the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, so the initial reaction for me, Cody, let's talk. I'm doing an official show, so let's talk. The initial reaction for me was, as a fan, right? Why would you trade your best corner? Why would you say that you believe that you're going to compete to win games throughout the offseason, and then you make a move where, once again, for maybe the fourth offseason in a row for this team, you're trading your best, if not one of the best players on your roster. Why are you doing this? And then I thought about it a little bit after, the hysteria went away. And I looked at the situation. Bradley Roby was due $9.2 million this year alone by the Houston Texans. Then I looked at Terrence Mitchell deal. $3.7 million due this year on a 2-year deal. Houston can move on from him next year. Desmond King, $3.1 million due this year. He's on a 1-year deal. Vernon Hargraves III, he's on a $1.9 million deal. His deal is up in 2002, so Houston can just completely cut ties with him. That alone is your top 3 corners as of right now going into week 1. Tremont Smith, $1.6 million due this year. His deal is up after 22. Jimmy Moreland, he's due $850,000 this year. So with those players combined, that equals up around the amount of Bradley Roby. So Houston had an opportunity to move on from Roby, understanding where they are right now. Okay, one thing, guys, you got to get out your head. Watson ain't playing. Okay, he was on a did not practice list with a non-injury. He ain't playing. Okay, if Watson's not playing, then get this through some of your heads and understanding of just this team is going to be a team that tanks. Tank is an NBA word, right? We get that. When you tank, you normally think of the NBA. This is something recent for the NFL. But they're going to tank. That is what it is. And when you can save money at one position by, cutting half of your salary down at that position potentially by trading one player, and you're in a position where you're going to build for the future. Now, of course, we are waiting to hear back what Houston gets for Roby once the deal is finalized and he's in New Orleans, whether they get a player back or a pick back. But that's a win for Houston. On top of that, they brought in Jimmy Moreland, who I expect will play a lot of snaps for Houston this year once he's able to get caught up to speed. Moreland, Mitchell, I think King, they're all better zone coverage cornerbacks. And as talented as Bradley Roby is as a player, his strong suit is man coverage. His weak suit is zone coverage. Lovie Smith is going to play a lot of zone coverage. They're going to trust their front seven to creating calls together, to create a bunch of pressure up front at different times, especially the faith in your front four to be able to cause pressure. And moving on from Bradley Roby, I think if you understand where your defense is schematically and what you want to do financially was actually the smart move for Houston. I understand the frustration for the players, but understand where this team is this season. Cody, I'm sorry to take all the time. It's okay to be mad, but it's also okay to walk back some of your statements and look at how it can be a win in the positive.
And John, I looked at this just like you, man. What in the world are the Houston Texans are doing? But what I would say is this: when I take a look at this Bradley Roby trade, first and foremost, you mentioned the amount of money that the Texans saved this year. When you look at his contract over the next 2 seasons, because he still was going to be on the contract next year as well, he was going to be making, I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of $10 million. By trading Bradley Roby to the Saints, the Texans actually cleared up close to $18 to $19 million over the next 2 years. And this Bradley Roby trade did two things for me. One, it showcased something we already knew what Nick Caserio was doing, and that is giving him an opportunity to clean up the mess that was caused by Bill O'Brien. Not saying that Bradley Roby's contract was a mess, but when you think about how much damage Bill O'Brien did to this organization when he was acting as the general manager, this is one of those moments where, you know what, you're going to have to take this loss and get even weaker at a position that might have already been your weakest position entering the 2021 season. But two, and most importantly, it showcased to me, John, what had you and I have been talking about nearly this entire time, ever since training camp has started. Yes, we are expecting this team to be somewhat decent. Well, of course, at the time prior to them naming their 53-man roster. But for me personally, this just shows that nobody on this roster is safe from being traded. Now, yesterday, I had an opportunity to ask David Culley whether or not we could expect more moves that could be made in regards to them trading a veteran player for some assets back. And this is what he had to say.
Well, I don't think we're shopping anybody. I think what happens is that, people make calls, people, try to get their team better. We try to get our team better, and, people have different conversations, and sometimes things come up that may work for both of you. And if it does, then you make a deal. But as far as shopping, we're not shopping anybody.
So understand, if we can really talk about it, understand what he's saying. Right now, they're going to go into every day what we got on the roster. How can we win? How can we get a strategy to at least act like we're trying to win, right? How can we do that? Team calls, say, hey, we want Bradley Roby. What's your price? We want a Brandon Cooks. Houston brought in Danny Amendola. I can see them moving on from Brandon Cooks. They have to move one player. So it wouldn't shock me if Brandon Cooks would be that guy that can make room for Danny Amendola. But we want Cooks, or I don't know, we want Cunningham, or we want Reed. Okay, what are you talking about right now? Talk to me. What are you saying? What's on the board? And they may find something that makes sense for the team, but not the team right now, the team that they're trying to build, whether it's a pick or asset. So I could see in Roby's case, them getting a 4th-round pick, Houston paying some of that salary, so New Orleans just doesn't eat on all that $9 million. I can see that happening. And I can also see Houston, I don't know how soon, but moving on from a Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, and that's something you and I have talked about a lot, and like I say, this Bradley Roby trade just showcased to me once again that nobody on this roster is safe from being traded. Now, at the time of this recording, and even at the time of our crossover with Wig over at Locked On Jaguars, we still don't know what the Texans got back. But when you take a look at the New Orleans Saints, they were in desperate need for a corner. And I'm pretty sure this was one of those situations, like David Culley said, we are not actively shopping anybody, but if the right team call and make the right price, they will move on from a player. And this is what that situation was. And this might be one of those rare scenarios where this is a trade where everyone wins, depending on what the Texans get back in return from the New Orleans Saints. Because the Saints needed a cornerback. Bradley Roby, as a veteran player, he gets to go to an opportunity where he was the best cornerback on a rebuilding team that was not expecting to win many games to a team where, okay, if they get their things together, especially if Jameis Winston can actually be the quarterback that we all expected him to be, they can actually make some noise and make a push for the playoffs. And then, New Orleans Saints, they get their cornerback in return. So
Worked out for both sides, at least as of right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the Locked On Texans YouTube page and Locked On Texans on YouTube. And also check out the main show for today, the Locked On crossover edition with Locked On Texans and Locked On Jags. John, some sports guy Hickman, Cody Davis _24, joined by the none other Locked On Tony Wiggins. So that's going to be a fun show. Check that out. We just had to talk about how important this trade was, what it means for the immediate presence and the future as well.